sake. Nearly fell over already. It is far too cold and windy to bother with any sort of witty introduction. So let's just get into this. So I got 3 videos for you coming up where I'm going to be going through my top albums of, would it be 2010s, I suppose? Yeah, 2010 to 2019. In today's video, I'm going to be going through my albums of 2010 to 2012, and then the other videos will do the other ones, obviously. Now, I'm not necessarily going to have a favourite album of each year, but I'm just going to give a bit of a list, I suppose, of albums that meant a lot to me during that particular year. One thing that's kind of crazy when I was looking back at these albums was how it really just put me back in that time and really made me reflect on those particular years. Music does that. It's one of those very visceral things. It's much like smell or taste, and that you can just, you know, it's just very oh god, makes you feel shit. So let's get into it. Cathedral, Guessing Game. I loved that album. I really enjoyed that game. Really psychedelic album. Did I mention it's cold and windy? Really great album by Cathedral. Particularly enjoyed Funeral of Dreams. Such a trippy song, man. Really, really loved that album. Joe Satriani with Black Swans and Wormhole Wizards. I'm not really a fan of the shredder type stuff, and I'm not really that big a fan of Joe Satriani, to be honest with you, but I actually really enjoyed this album. Opener, Premonition, is just absolutely fantastic. And the calibre of musicianship and songwriting carries right through to God Is Crying, the last track. As I said, not really a fan of the shredders. Find a lot of it to be quite soulless a lot of time, but had a lot of time for this album. Really enjoyed this one. Ephemerate is a band that you're going to hear on these lists quite a lot of. Very underrated band, the Italian Doom Lords, and they released Eve in 2010. Songs were titled 1 to 5, and yeah, the opening song's like 18 minutes long or something like that. It's just a really, really slow build. Really builds attention, and it continues throughout the entirety of the album. Very good album. Triptykon with Eparistera Diamonds. Anyway, Tom G Warrior, of course, with Triptykon. Very heavy album. Really heavy album. I think quite a few people have an issue with Triptykon. I seem to remember. I guess maybe the Celtic Frost purist, maybe, I don't know, but yeah, I really enjoyed Triptykon. Of course, we had the self-titled debut by Periphery, Diamond Eyes by Deftones, and one of my favourite underground artists, I suppose if he's classed as underground, would be Cloudkicker, who released Beacons. Fantastic. Only just found out that he actually released an album in 2019. I had no idea about it. Good reviewing, Ben. Good reviewing. But I'll go into my top 5. Bong Ripper with Satan Worshipping Doom. Very heavy doom riffage, and with a name like that, come on, you can't argue. Wino with Adrift. This was an acoustic album by Scott, and what an album it is. I absolutely adore this album. I'm definitely intending on doing a review for this album at some stage. If you haven't checked this one out, do. Very emotional, some of his lyrics in this, and yeah, it's just all acoustic and just so well done. Fantastic album. I would have to include the Jonah Hex EP by Mastodon. They were originally brought on board to do the music for the film, which they did. So essentially what you've got is 4 tracks, all of which are instrumental, very cinematic. A little more of a slow burn than some of their other stuff, but I listened to this EP a lot that year. Fantastic. Always loved Mastodon. Another album I really enjoyed was Belus by Burzum, as you might say. Again, not a huge Burzum fan, but I don't know, this album really got me. I really enjoyed this. I think a lot of it was actually reworkings of some of the electronic stuff he did when he was in prison, I want to say. But there's a real hypnotic quality to this album, and I enjoyed this one a lot. But finally, I think, not necessarily album of the year, because as I said, I'm not doing that, but one of the top albums for me was definitely Snakes for the Divine, High on Fire. Another band you'll hear a lot throughout these lists. Absolutely love High on Fire. Such a visceral band, the true successors to Motorhead, many would say. Just absolute down and out dirty riffage. Talking about all sorts of fantasy based stuff and conspiracy theories and the like. bloody exhausted. So that's the last album I want to mention for 2010. Snakes for the Divine, High on Fire, absolutely awesome. Bastard Samurai. So 2011 happened. Let's talk about it. Earth with Earth of. Oh, let me get the full title. Earth, Angels of Darkness, Demons of Light, Part 1. Yes, fantastic record. Absolutely loved this album. Really immersive, pretty much instrumental from what I remember. Just something you can really get lost in, and definitely one to check out. Cloudkicker again with Let Yourself Be Huge. Loved this album. Going more into some of his ambient stuff. There was still a lot of heavy riffage on here, but definitely some more ambient stuff as well. We also had Steven Wilson with Grace for Drowning. Not one of my favourite Steven Wilson albums, but anything he does is always highly worth checking out, and yeah, I'd highly recommend you do. Always high quality with Steven. And also we got Chelsea Wolfe with Apocalypsis, who is also another artist who's always worth checking out. Incredible stuff. So let's get into some of my top 5 albums of the year. Feist with Metals. I remember seeing her performing on Jules Holland the same night that Mastodon was on there, and yeah, just incredible. Really, was it How Do You Never Go There? Why do you never go there? Not a metal album at all, but one that I particularly enjoyed. Opeth, of course, with Heritage. Always a pleasure to hear Opeth. The mighty Devin Townsend released Deconstruction and Ghost this year, and those albums are huge to me. Definitely going to be doing a review of every single Devin Townsend album at some point. I've already started writing out stuff for Key and Addicted for the new year, and I will definitely be doing something for Deconstruction and Ghost as well. Deconstruction was very much a callback to his time in Strapping Young Lad, but it was his facing his fear of heavy music again and wanting to overcome it and realise that it's actually a part of him. And Ghost was the complete opposite, a very stripped back, laid back, ambient acoustic album. It's just glorious. You can just really lay back and listen to it on headphones and really just get lost in it. Incredible albums, both of them. Absolutely love those two. Then we have Mastodon with The Hunter. I think this is a very overlooked album. A lot of people, myself included, I guess, when I first heard it, I was a little put off by the album at first. I mean, this followed Crack the Sky, which is one of the most prog-tastic metal albums of all time. And this was more, I wouldn't say pop at all, but there was definitely more of a lot of the songs were catchier, shorter. I was put off at first, but I have to say that there's a lot of great stuff on this album. There really is. Very underappreciated album. For me, definitely one of the highlights of the year. But I think the album that I think most of when I think of this year would be Machine Head with Unto the Locust. Always been a huge Machine Head fan, and as much as I did actually enjoy Catharsis last year, I actually think that Unto the Locust is their last great album that they really did. Of course, this was when Adam Duce, Phil Demmel, Dave McClain were still in the band, and Adam Duce left after this album. And as much as I think Jared is a great bass player and a vocalist, I think he's a great presence as well, good guy. I don't know, Machine Head didn't quite seem the same to me after this, but there's some incredible stuff on this. I particularly enjoyed the special edition as well, because it had their cover of Rush's Witching Hour. Is it Witching Hour? I think it's Witching Hour. They do such a good job of that, and I really enjoyed their cover of that song. Absolutely awesome. Unto the Locust, Machine Head. That's 2011 done. Let's get on with this. Let's get this content done. So let's move on to 2012. There are a lot of albums I really enjoyed this year. First one worth mentioning, Lamb of God, of course, released Resolution. Not in my top albums for this year, although I did enjoy the album. It had a lot of good stuff on it. It's not one of their strongest in my opinion. Neurosis with Honour Found in Decay, always a pleasure, if that's the right word. I don't know if you can you say pleasure for Neurosis? I don't think it goes really, does it? Yeah, it's always a pleasure to hear a new... Is it a pleasure? No, it's not a pleasure. It's always an experience to hear a new Neurosis album. Biohazard released Reborn in Defiance, and while I'd lost interest in Biohazard for quite a few years, there were actually some good songs on here. Earth again with Earth, Angels of Darkness, Demons of Light Part 2. Continuation of Part 1 obviously, and highly worth checking out to complete the set. Very, very strong music indeed. And then Ephemerate released 2 albums, Opus Primum and Opus Alter, both of which highly worth checking out. Again, the Italian Doom Lords doing what they do, being Italian Doomish. Down released the first of, well, what was supposed to be the first of 4 EPs, Down 4 Part 1. Unfortunately, they only ever released 2 parts, and then Mr. Phil Anselmo did something silly at Dime Bash, which kind of put a halt on things. But yeah, this is a highly worthwhile EP to check out, as is Part 2. Periphery released Periphery 2, Cloudkicker released Fade, and also we had Storm Corrosion, the collaboration between Michael Ackerfeld and Steven Wilson. Some really, really great songs on that album for sure. I'd be interested to see if they do another collaboration on that, because there was a lot of good stuff. Fucking awesome album. Did I need to swear? So let's get into my top albums of the year. The Evens with The Odds, Amy Farina and Ian Mackay. And yeah, some people might be surprised to hear me put this on the list, but I love The Evens and I love a lot of what Ian Mackay does. I think he's a really interesting guy, got a lot of integrity. Minor Threat was such a great band for Gazzy, of course. But yeah, The Evens with The Odds. Highly worth checking out this album if you haven't already. Really enjoyed this one. Ihsahn with Eremita. This was my first album from Ihsahn I actually listened to, and I was pretty much hooked straight away. I've been listening to everything he's done ever since. Fucking A. I like the way he always tries to do something different with every album. There's always that signature sound to what he does, but there's also something different as well. And yeah, highly recommend checking this one out. High on Fire with De Vermis Mysterious. Whew. Some heavy riffage in this one. Matt Pike is without a shadow of a doubt one of the greatest riff lords of our time. I just always enjoy a High on Fire album. They're just what's the word? Reliable. They're just, you know what you're going to get, but in a good way, not boring way. Just solid, heavy albums every single time, and they never fail to disappoint. Whenever I want to hear something heavy, I can just put on any album of theirs really, and I'm going to be happy. Now for an album that I'm sure a lot of people will put as their number one, Gojira with L'Enfant Sauvage. The Axe, I just love the riffing on that. Just such a good album. Explosiva is it what it opens up with, and of course the title track. There's just some great stuff on this album. Gojira are just one of those bands that, rightly so, are just getting bigger and bigger. They're just such an incredible band. It's always a pleasure to hear their albums. But for me, my top album of the year, and I'm going to give one for this year, is Devin Townsend with Epicloud. I just really enjoyed this album. It's such a enjoyable, positive album. There's so much to enjoy, and it's by far the album that I've listened to the most from that year. And it's also worth pointing out that he also released By a Thread, which was like 9 discs, which was a live set. I think it was 4 DVDs and 5 CDs, chronicling the quadrilogy. He performed Key, Addicted, Deconstruction and Ghost on separate nights, performing each album in its entirety, and captured it all on this stunning box set. So I'm going to cheat a bit and put both of those as my number one for 2012. Oh man, this is so windy. That'll do for the first list, I think. So that's 2010 to 2012. And I will be back in a couple of days where I'll be doing, 2013 to 2015. And I'll see more of you guys then, you dirty bastards.